Good morning, traders and investors. Thank you for tuning in to Pre-Market Prep. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Getting your day started off right in the pre-market with some good old overnight news, some breaking news a little bit later today that we might cover, some good trading ideas, and probably most important of all for the Pre-Market Prep audience, some darn good education. Let's give a quick little rundown here of what's going on. Then we're going to hop over to Joel and take a look at the markets. Want to just start off by saying thoughts and prayers to the people in the family related to that flight 5342. It's awful, but we got to keep going in this world, ladies and gentlemen. Think about those folks. We're going to focus on the big earnings out for today. Fade trade. The fade trade is a big theme that we're going to talk about here today. On those earnings reports, earnings out of Microsoft, Tesla, Meta last night. This morning, we got UPS, Caterpillar, and LUV. Tonight, we're going to get earnings out of Apple, Intel, and Visa. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we will be getting data from the U.S. on GDP. That's for the fourth quarter. And our guest today at 8:15 a.m., Mark Chaikin of Chaikin Analytics. We're going to hop over to Joel here in just a sec. But first, folks, let's run that pre-market prep intro.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. And this is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
All right. Good morning, traders and investors. We're starting out in the green here of 14 and a quarter handles. I'll call it a precarious 14 and a quarter handles, and I'll tell you why I think that in a little bit. The buck is flat, 107.87, running into trouble at 108. TLT perking up after who knows what Paul said yesterday, up 69 cents, 88.70. USO backing off, trying to put in a double bottom, down 55 cents, 77.23. GLD moving up towards that high of the move, up 244 at 256.64. SLV back over 28, up 34 cents at 28.34. And Bitcoin futures right back up $920 at 106,030. Let me stop my screen share here. Triple D banging on the keyboard last night. Let's add him to the stage here. And Christian, I'm sure you had your head on a swivel too. We had some wild moves last night.
It was. And you know what? We knew it was going to be wild. I mean, you absolutely knew this market, with the wildness that we've had, it was going to be wild. But I got to tell you, the fade trade last night was the fading of all fading. It's like every initial move, it seemed like, turned around and went the opposite way. From, Microsoft, which delivered very quickly, it got back to green briefly. Meta was just crazy. Dropped $45 in the first couple seconds. And then bang, like literally a minute later, and Joel, you could show this. A minute later was green. I mean, that was the quickest dip ever. Shout out to my buddy Jeff, who sent me a text of his trade confirmation. He bought Meta on that dip last night at $645. So awesome purchase, Jeff. Obviously $687 there right now. Listen to the show, buying the dip. I mean, wow. There was some big moves. And then Tesla was the same thing as well. And I did pretty good on the Tesla last night here too, because I tweeted out right before, you can see the tweet here. Joel's showing all of them, but if you just clicked on the tweet itself, I said about 350 right before. I just had a feeling, like, again, not a feeling, but you could kind of see, like, the same reason the Netflix that I went long, you kind of thought that Tesla was probably going to miss numbers. I mean, we already had their delivery numbers, which weren't good. I was worried about the Dem hangover, obviously, where Democrats aren't buying the cars, because of, the whole politics behind it. So I just kind of had a feeling they were going to miss numbers. So I tweeted out before. I also had a feeling that the dip would get bought, because it's not about, Tesla isn't about the now, it's about where they're going. And that's the reason the stock got bought there too. So anyways, it was a great night for fade trading. Good night for my trading. Hopefully you guys had a good night too. Christian, how was your night?
Hey, good morning, guys. Well, not only the fade trade for earnings, but also for Mr. Powell, too. Powell spoke yesterday,
Oh,
too, and it was just a whippy. We started to move one direction and then another. And sometimes I say this and I kind of jinx it, but I wasn't expecting too much. I thought that the expectations were a little bit out of whack when we looked at the Fed Fund futures yesterday.
Mhm.
So that was the one thing where I just was watching the price, and we kept on going kind of back and forth. And I was like, to your point about like chasing, like you couldn't chase any of those moves yesterday, nor should you really on Fed Day, because especially while Powell is speaking. But that was the first thing that stood out to me. And then second, exactly, fading and buying the dip. You were talking about yesterday that retail and buy the dip mentality, and I think that really kind of played out with Tesla, because it's not so much about their numbers, like, and that's the initial reaction. So it's a very good thought process, because I think Elon spent more time talking about new things and prospects of growth rather than old things, their earnings. And the same thing happened with Meta. I don't know why Meta, they were supposed to release earnings like right after usually they go right after the close. They didn't release until their earnings call starts at 5 o'clock Eastern. And I think they released their earnings like about 10 minutes before that. So I don't know what
yeah,
happened with the delay,
it
but there
was
was also
delayed.
the buy the mentality in Meta as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. Like, the buy the dip is strong. And we talked about this and tweeted it out a couple days ago. I mean, the number one retail strategy, the chat knew it too when we asked them, is buy the dip. Retail's still driving the bus here in this market there. So it's anticipated that probably dips are getting bought. Even the Microsoft dip here is slowly getting bought from last night's down. And yeah, I know it got bought initially, so the Microsoft was wild. It got hit on the numbers, then got bought up to flat. Then the conference call came, Azure growth not where it needs to be. So they hammered it down again. But, slow and steady. We're down 415. We picked up another 10 points. They can't help themselves. The retail traders are in there buying the dip. They just can't help themselves. But I mean, again, this year is not just about buying the dip, Christian. It's about selling the rep. And I mean, I know we're flying through and we can go into some of these reports in details here in a second, but I just want to add NVIDIA to the mix, because did you see the yesterday after hours? It was a crazy, crazy tape for NVIDIA. So, I mean, it pops, it drops, it's all over the place. The 120 is huge support, but go to last night's chart too, Joel. I mean, the NVIDIA range last night was epic. It was the craziest fading as well. And I don't know if you can see it that great on that chart. Just try to blow it up a little bit more. But
This is
NVIDIA,
at 17:30. Yeah, this is 17:30 right here when it went up. I saw it and I didn't think it was there. It popped up. It popped up to 127.34.
yeah,
It like fourth, and I'm like, was
why?
that print? I don't know. I
I
don't
don't know
know.
either. Like, NVIDIA was down with Microsoft, then it popped $5 to go up at 127. This is last night's action. Then
Right
they
here.
hammered it down. How low did they hammer it after that? Like 120. Like, they brought it all the way back down.
Yeah.
121 you have there?
121.50.
So down to, so it went from basically being flat to Microsoft reporting hammer and tech. So it went down 2. Then it went up 5. Then it gave it all back and went down the 5 again, and then bounced back, and now we're flat. So you look at NVIDIA, oh, nothing happened in NVIDIA. No, there was all kinds of money being made fading moves last night too. Contrarian dream this year so far, just fading moves. Even to the point of NVIDIA the previous day, where we took out the previous day's low at 116. Then we rallied all the way up to 129, that 129, 130 resistance. Then hammer it back down to 120 again, and then we're just yo-yoing in here. I mean, this is chop. This is definition of chop.
Question
And-
for you guys.
Yep.
Has NVIDIA now turned into a day trading stock just like this, where you're buying the dip, where you can buy the dip because it really is, to your point, sold off a few times yesterday, and you could buy the dip and then you could sell it and you could sell that rip a little bit. But is this now a day trading stock versus a swing trading stock?
I think it is right now, and maybe that's going to be the case for the next couple of weeks until we get clarity on their earnings. I mean, obviously we have big earnings tonight too, Apple, Amazon, but that's not going to directly impact NVIDIA. So maybe we just chop around here, Christian. Maybe it's a good call. Maybe just to play the chop here until we get more clarity from the earnings, which, when do they report? Do you have the date? Do you know about?
It's later. It's later.
It is always late. 2 weeks from now? Is it
Yeah.
3 weeks? Anybody have the date on NVIDIA?
By the way, nice comment by Franz says it already was a day trading. That's a good
it is
point. 226 Feb 26. So
so we're a long ways
while
away.
ago.
Yeah.
So hard to really get involved here, like, big bullish or big bearish. I mean, there's cases for the bull side, cases for the bear side, and maybe it stays equally weighted. And that's what's going to happen. Is going to get chopped around.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with you, Christian. I think it is a day trading vehicle here right now. You get down near support 116, 117, maybe you're flipping it out. You get up near resistance 128, 129, you're probably flipping it out again. So I just think this market is built. And we predicted this. My acronym for the year, FADE. FADE is working so well. AMD not so much. Dell's been a disaster. Etsy's trying to hold on. But the FADE, the F in FADE is just working so well. I had a pretty good trading month. It started a little rough. I had a really rough one week where I almost lost money. I usually don't lose money through a whole week. Any day I do, but on the day trading, I'm usually pretty consistent. You make hundreds and hundreds of trades. Usually it works itself out. It was just a horrible week the second week of January. But I mean, I've come around. I've actually brought it up here to actually be a pretty decent month here at the end. The reason is just, again, contrarian strategies, fading moves, not getting sucked in and saying, oh, this stock's up 10, it's going up another 10 tomorrow. I mean, if you were doing that on NVIDIA 2 days ago, it's up 10, it's going right back. Boom, you're down 10. So, I mean, that's the market. Understanding the market that you're in, the environment, is sometimes more important than understanding the individual stocks.
So one quick observation, and I think everybody was kind of focused on these big names, but the big surprise of last night was who? What name, just kind of did a little bit of shock to everybody, I think. Upside.
The original AI stock. Watson.
Right.
Yeah.
IBM.
Yep. Let's do this. Let's go do this. We got Mark Chaikin coming on at 8:14, 8:15.
Yep.
And he's gonna go through. We'll go through the NVIDIA. I think this is setting up. We'll talk the technicals and fundamentals with him. But how about the original Talk to Watson? Was that the original thing? But IBM blasting the new all-time highs. Nice move here. They beat big on AI with a $2 billion generative AI business. They beat 392 versus 375. Slight beat on the sales here. Wow, pre-market high. This ain't got to 258.70, so you backed off that, but that's the only level you have here in IBM, blasting to a new all-time high.
It's nice at a new all-time high. I'm still of the opinion that the fade trade is controlling the overall market, and that means I'm not chasing a 21-point up move, because that would be the opposite of fade. That is a momentum strategy that hasn't worked as well. Again, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. There's certain stocks that are breaking out and just seem to have it. But there's other stocks that have just been chopping around. It's a big report for IBM. IBM also has a history of not following through that well on their earnings as well. We've seen it before where IBM goes up, hangs out for a couple days, and then starts to leak. So this is not the stock I'm chasing this morning, even though I love it at new all-time highs. The company's obviously turning itself around after it was in the doldrums for the better part of a decade. I just think we're just not in the market environment where I'm going to chase the move up 22 points. Christian, your thoughts?
I just get it's been such a nice performer, and it just gets very little attention. I mean, I'm kind of just blown away that the stock's back just returned to new highs. To your point, I agree. I think you kind of let it settle in a little bit. Maybe if you get some type of, you kind of wait until it consolidates and maybe puts in a bull flag. That's what I would be looking for. But I think that, I try to basically put together a earnings watch list of names that do this type of thing, and say, so this way I can kind of monitor them. And because ultimately I want to be buying dips. If there is a dip in this thing, that's now I'll go into kind of monitor mode. But yeah, I'm not going to chase it here either.
Okay. Let's go back to the big guns that just reported here. I do want to talk Tesla.
Dennis, let's bring on Mark before we
Mark's
do that.
Yeah.
Cool?
Sorry.
Mark's
Interrupt me.
No, you good?
Mark's there. Didn't know Mark.
All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Chaikin of Chaikin Analytics. How are you doing today, sir?
Really fine. Look at
Nice.
this panel. This is impressive. Hey guys, hi
Sure
Christian.
we all are.
You know, Mark.
Mark,
Yeah.
how are you? What's
I'm great.
So I got to just start that. Obviously, you've got the CNBC commercial where you're calling for the Nvidia fall. I mean, that's finally happened here. We were calling you the prophet the other day because that Nvidia had the most violent fall. And I'm like, Joel is giving you credit. He's like, you know who called this? And then I'm like, it's Mark Chaikin because I see that commercial all the time. And I mean, boom, it came down here, Mark. So is this the new, do you believe that this continues here? Is this like, the bubble finally popping in Nvidia here? Or does this buy the dip mentality of this retail crowd just bring it right back up? Thoughts on Nvidia, first of all?
Well, we were never bearish on Nvidia. The power gauge was bullish, but it was certainly an attention grabber. And we actually recommended a stock as an alternative that's up 50% since September, which was first FFIV. So, we had a good swap, but I don't think it's over for Nvidia. But we have a lot of sort of more creative ways to play the AI boom going forward than Nvidia.
We'll talk about F5 first. Fantastic call, by the way. Obviously, your subscribers doing really well on that one. That thing hit a new all-time high here yesterday.
Yeah, great earnings report.
Is that something you'd ring the? So, okay, here's a question for you, because we all are, you've been great at stock picking for a number of years. When do you ring the register? Like, do you ring the register when you get a 50-point out move like you had in FFIV and say, okay, it's now, all priced in, or do you just continue to hold this stuff? When do you actually ring the register on a trade like this?
Well, if you're a trader, you ring the register, maybe a day and a half after the spike. So looking to sell it today. But if you're a long-term investor, they've just confirmed your bullishness. So why exit? This is the old story in the Jesse Livermore book with Mr. Peacock or Mr. Turkey. It's the young guy's telling him sell, 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 and he says, "Young man, it's a bull market. If I sell, I'll lose my position." So, that's an apocryphal story. It really depends. I mean, right now the Chaikin money flow is strong. The power gauge, our quantum system is bullish. So, you grit your teeth and you ride out the inevitable sideways to down action for 5 to 8 trading sessions, and you wait for that next earnings report. That's really the key to this kind of a market. And that's why earnings estimate revisions and earnings surprises are 2 of the 20 factors in our model. You would expect there's going to be a series of earnings surprises, and in fact, you've had them. You had an earnings surprise in late July, you had an positive earnings surprise in late October, and now you've got a third one. And in each of those cases, they rallied up pretty sharply. They pulled back for 5 to 8 trading sessions, and they kept going. So I think the bigger decision is, are you in a bull market? Is it ongoing? And if your answer is yes, which is my answer, then you stay with it.
Mark, I want to go back to the NVIDIA here. And so what I like about you is you do fundamental and technical analysis. You have the Chaikin analytics, the power gauge. Did you make a bearish call when the power gauge was still positive?
Well, that wasn't a bearish call. By the way, the power gauge has been neutral on NVIDIA since late November. So, we're very consistent in that we think NVIDIA is still very much a part of the AI boom I think is going to continue on through the end of the decade. But clearly the valuations are starting to affect our ratings and the technicals. The stock is in a sideways pattern with a double top. And I think if you own NVIDIA, you want to probably tighten your stops up to whatever the low is in this current downswing. But a lot of this has to do with taxes, where you bought it. I think there are better ways to be invested in the AI boom is the bottom line.
And so just evaluating, the news. I mean, it was in a trading range, very nice trading range, just under 130, 150. And then boom, the news came out from the DeepSeek. I mean, now that wasn't in your thesis. Just give us your overall thoughts on that, because that had a pronounced effect on the market, and we've really bounced all the way back.
Well, I think DeepSeek was a red herring. The timing of it was interesting, just after TikTok got banned. So who knows what lurking time bombs or data collections the Chinese have put in there. But there's also a story going around that the hedge fund Quant, who put the team together, actually bought $2.1 billion worth of NVIDIA chips before the embargo. And so how much of that went into building DeepSeek? I wouldn't worry about DeepSeek. It First of all, DeepSeek's bullish for everybody who's going to implement AI. And that's why you saw Salesforce up on the Monday after the announcement.
Yeah.
Software, anybody who's going to use AI to enhance their business offerings is going to benefit. If you believe the numbers, 10 cents per whatever iteration versus $2.40. Well, guess who benefits from that? Salesforce, CrowdStrike, Palantir, you name it. And so these are Adobe was up, Apple was up after that news. So I don't think that I'm calling it deep throat, but I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. If anything, it just means that the US players got to buy more NVIDIA chips, be more creative with them. So again, I don't think NVIDIA is not my favorite way to play AI going forward. I've got a number of stocks I like CRDO, which took a huge hit, which I think I actually recommended on the show. And we exited initially when it spiked up in early December, because we had put it on around 45 and it was trading at 65, between 65 and 70. But we're very bullish on this right now. This company makes high-speed networking connectors that are essential to data centers. And I think one thing the market missed, there was an immediate assumption after the DeepSeek announcement that data centers would no longer be a growth industry. Well, whether it's AI or just rebuilding the electrical grid, we need more electricity. So anybody who's involved with electricity for data centers like Vistra or Constellation Energy, anybody who's involved with high-speed networking like ANET and Credo is a buy here, in my opinion.
And all these stocks really got hit. So you're saying you'd probably be coming in on a stock like Arista Networks that went from 130 to 100. It's 107, 12 in the pre-market. You'd be buying this dip on that stock.
Oh, absolutely. We had the unfortunate timing of recommending it last week, but it's definitely a buy down here. I mean, these are the stocks that are going to benefit from data center construction, and I'd also be buying Vistra and Constellation Energy. I think these are two really fine companies with a mixed portfolio of energy solutions, including nuclear and natural gas. This is an opportunity, a real opportunity. Doesn't mean we won't have more chop here, but I think the market gave us an opportunity. I know people who bought Credo, held their nose, went down another 10%, but it's trading above 62 this morning. Well, 61, 66 right now. So it's starting to find buyers again.
Gotcha. I was just going to also ask you, because I know you do a really good rundown of sectors, Mark. Anything that you're looking at, like, I've noticed that the financials have had really strong earnings. Anything that you like in that space that has a strong power gauge, or any other sectors that are coming to life for you?
Well, consumer discretionary historically has been very strong in the first quarter, and we're seeing that play out again. I do like the financials. The power gauge loves the financials, but I'm looking for opportunities in consumer discretionary stocks. Marriott was one of our top 10 stocks for 2025, and it's in a very seasonally strong period. So it resisted any selling pressure starting on Monday. So I think there's a focus again on, and I'm looking at larger cap names, there's a focus again on consumer discretionary names, and the Power Gauge likes a number of them. Let's just take a look.
There's a consumer name that I'm watching. I've been watching Deckers and ONON breakout. What do you see anything in the Power Gauge? Just on one other name that I see consolidating. I'm waiting for a break in this name. It's Burlington. What does the Power Gauge say about Burlington? Because it looks very close to all that consolidation and possibly a break.
There was a lot of smart money selling between November and mid-January, and that's based on the Chaikin money flow indicator. We've got a neutral rating. It doesn't do anything for me here.
Okay.
I'm looking at Ralph Lauren, which we recommended about 2 months ago. I'm looking at Lululemon, which has a really nice chart pattern and a triple top here up around 420. So we may see a breakout there. And there's a real rebound fundamentally going on in Lululemon. And
why do you say smart money, Mark? I mean, and I don't want you to give away all the secrets on the Chaikin money flow. I see the monthlies here, and I see exactly what you're talking about. They just went out 296 to just under 300. How do you classify that as smart money? Just the volume, the way the orders are put out. How does it fit into the Chaikin money flow?
Well, we're very transparent. Chaikin money flow was introduced in 1982. So we're over 40 years in. We look at where a stock closes in its range for the day. And the assumption is if the stock closes over time, it's a 4-week calculation for 20 trading days. If it closes consistently below the midpoint, it means that at the end of the day, there's latent supply. And so I call that the smart money, and for years it's been the smart money for 40 years. So you get a stock that closes consistently in the upper portion of its range. It means that all the sellers have been taken out during the day, and there's still buying interest. And with the concentration of money in ETFs, that's only become more so. So I think we call it the smart money because it's the represents the biggest players in the market. In other words, it's not retail buying that causes a stock to close at its high or near in the upper portion of its range. It's institutional buying.
Is that analogous to the late money at the track? I mean, now with online wagering, it's a whole different. But being at the track, I used to, with my dad, be watching a horse would be 6-1, 7-1, and then boom, minute and a half to go, it would drop to 2-1. My dad'd be like, "Oh, the late money just went on to 3,"
Yeah,
and then
no,
boom.
That's a great story, but no, this is the fact that when there are more buyers than sellers, but when there's general agreement about the fundamentals and the technicals,
Okay.
you've got a number of market participants with different styles in a stock. You've got momentum buyers, you've got fundamental people, you've got high frequency hedge fund type traders. And when there's general agreement, which happens when stocks are in uptrends with a little bit of momentum behind them, at the end of the day, the sellers get out early. If you want to sell a stock, you're going to sell early. So whether it's FFIV, whether it's ANET, the sellers will typically get out early. The buyers are in there, but there's latent buying, and they can't get enough supply after that in strong stocks where there's general agreement on the fundamentals. And it's a pattern that I picked up on in the 80s, and it's worked. It really has worked.
Mark, I got one more question for you because it's always interesting with these earnings moves. I see ServiceNow down about 10%. They reported earnings that were a little bit light on their guidance. We haven't covered it yet, but is this a name that you think? I'm kind of leaning towards that this name has a good chance to buy the dip once we get going. What's your take on ServiceNow?
Power Gauge has been bullish on ServiceNow since July when it was trading around 750. I love the company. I think they're doing everything right, and they've got really talented people at the top. So in this market environment, I wouldn't rush in to buy it, but our long-term trend line is at around 1050, 1060, and our lower volatility band's at 1,000. So in that range, I think it's a good buy. Personally, I'd prefer Palantir right here, which isn't quite the same company, but it's certainly a high-flying technology stock. And they've got earnings coming out on Monday, and their last earnings report just blew the stock up in a good way. So I'm looking, and I have a position in Palantir. So
does valuation scare you in Palantir, Mark? 50 times sales. I mean, its valuation is in the stratosphere. Does this scare you at all, or is just story continues to carry it?
The story continues to carry it. I mean, this is Peter Thiel's time with Trump in the White House and Musk, his buddy. You know, we called when we wrote this up about a month ago, or actually, yeah, a month ago in one of our trading services when it dipped down into the mid 60s, and we said, Mafia Don reaping the benefits of government contracts, because this used to be called the PayPal Mafia. Musk, Peter Thiel, and Reid Hoffman, and it's a great time for Palantir. They've got AI in their sort of quiver, and government contracts are going to come pretty fast and furious for them, not for Lockheed, but for, say, Palantir, because Peter Thiel's got connections in the White House and the company has great products. So I think it's a great mix right here.
All right, we've been on the line with Mark Chaikin of Chaikin Analytics, joining the show not as often as he used to, but had to get you on to discuss that great.
Hey! Anytime I get that email invitation, I jump on it.
Okay, all right. Well, you're going to get a lot. You're going to get a lot more starting next month. Mark Chaikin,
great.
Chaikin Analytics. Okay,
really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Do we want to talk about the GDP number, or don't we care?
Yeah, no, we care. It's not moving the markets too much. I always go to TLT to really see the response, and it's kind of muted. We were up ahead of it. We're up after it. We also had jobless claims as well, which was a little bit light. This number is not really moving markets, though. But give us the numbers.
I got you guys. Here we are.
Yeah.
Preliminary reading for Q4 US GDP up 2.3%. Economists were expecting a 2.7% rise, so a little later than expected. Do just want to note that this is the preliminary reading. With any GDP reading, you get a preliminary figure, you get a middle updated figure, and then you get a final reading. So we are going to get two more.
And then you get a revision after that.
Even after that, yeah. So we are going to get at least two more of these, but obviously this is a lagging indicator. We've been kind of highlighting, the significance of leading versus lagging indicators, just to give a little heads up on that. This is obviously a lagging indicator.
Yes, GDP is really fun to talk about at cocktail parties, but it doesn't really move the market because it's old news. I actually look whenever there's GDP. I look more at like the what the other data is, specifically like the weekly jobless claims is more of a leading indicator, 207 versus 225, as Dennis mentioned. Just a reminder, tomorrow we get the PCE index. It's not called the PCE deflator anymore. It's called the PCE price index. They're looking for 0.3, which is another gauge of inflation, or the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation.
Fed likes that one. So we do move off the PCE. We don't move as much as the CPI, but don't think it doesn't move the markets. It will move the markets. It will move TLT. It will move the interest rate sensitive names. Okay, to the earnings parade here, because there was an earnings parade. And I mean, we kind of covered Meta, Tesla, and Microsoft a little bit here. I want to dive a little farther into Tesla, just because obviously still the biggest position in my long-term portfolio. They say we're a cult. CNBC officially said that Tesla, the only reason it's up is because it's a cult stock. There's nothing here. Dan Nathan said it's $1.5 trillion meme coin and nothing else. I mean, again, sure, we can say, the valuation is nosebleed. Absolutely. Valuation stretched. When I was buying at a 180, it was trading 75 times earnings. I was paying up. We're now 175 times earnings because the earnings have actually come down. So when you look at it from the past, it looks like, holy crap, why would you ever buy this? Listen to the call, though. Listen to what's happening. Listen to the story, because story drives price. Fundamentals can drive price to a certain extent, but story is really what is the price driver. Fundamentals really what holds up a stock, valuation support. Story drives price. I mean, he said everything on the call that the market wanted to hear. Talked, basically 2025. Gene summed it up pretty good too. Gene said he put the bar on the floor for 2025, and he put the bar into the stratosphere for 2026, 2027, and 2028, which he did. I mean, he went to extreme talks saying 2026, using it reminded me of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He was using this is gonna be awesome, ridiculously good. And what was the other words he was using, Christian? Were you listening to it a little bit too? There was a couple other words he used, which it was totally a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Excellent, ridiculously good, and the market is popping on this stuff. I mean, he's not the best speaker in the world either.
No one remembers that movie. I don't.
People remember Bill and Ted's Excellent. Christian remembers Bill.
Oh
and
my
Ted.
gosh, I love that movie.
Brett's got my back.
I'm thrilled that you love it, Dennis.
Well, what's funny too is
that was all fun.
Go ahead.
But again, what really was moving was a lot of stuff that was said about Optimus. I mean, this market is all about Optimus. Just going through the Musk commentary, which is just words at this point in time. But Musk said, I see a path for Tesla to be the most valuable company in the world, possibly bigger than the next 5 companies combined. Talking about Optimus, just looking at timelines here, which I think are definitely, we know Musk doesn't hit timelines, but he was aggressive with his talking of the timelines, talking about production starting mid next year. I think people were thinking about Optimus production, mass production starting a little bit later in next year into 2027. He's basically saying 1 year from now that they're going to start producing, he was saying 10,000 units per month. Then after that, 100,000 units per month, and just ramping from there. Talking about eventually that the production cost is going to drop to $20,000 on these things eventually. Just basically the majority of Tesla's market cap eventually he sees being Optimus. So, I mean, optimistic about Optimus is really what is driving the bus here this morning. I think that story continues here, though. Again, the reason I have a huge investment is Tesla is, one, I think the full self-drive is awesome, and I think they are going to solve it. But the biggest, wild card here is, Optimus and humanoids. And I wish I had more opportunities to invest in public companies that are in humanoids, because I'm all in on humanoids. I think in 5 years, humanoids are changing the world. I mean, we are just in a different world where they're doing our monotonous tasks. Humans can do a lot of other things that, we get time back. I mean, what is time worth to everyone? So, I mean, give me the ideas here, folks, on other investments besides Tesla, because if you've got a good humanoid plane, I'm all over it. I'm all over it. Right now, Boston Dynamics, I believe in them too. Hyundai's potentially going to spin them off, and they were talking about a potential IPO for Boston Dynamics. I would probably buy that. But give me some public companies with humanoids, because right now, Tesla's really kind of the best bet right now. But if you got some other ones, let me know. That's where I'm at.
All right, let's just quickly. I mean, I don't know about humanoids. I don't know. I've been hearing about FSD for a while. I don't have a time frame on those, or really an opinion. I'm just going to look at this technically, and kind of what I said yesterday is I just don't like coming off the high and then making a much lower high. Right? You did get the 50% retracement. I think you got a nice little range here, and you got to the bottom of that range last night. I think the bulls are in firm control. As long as you hold these trio of lows at the 374 area, and I think you're chopping. Look how long you've been chopping around in this area. So, Tesla does that 1, 2, 3 weeks, and then you get your breakout. But
or
right now,
1, 2, 3 months. I mean, we had a ridiculous move from 180 to 470. It's not absurd to think we're going to go into a digestion period. I think that's what you're having here right now with Tesla, is the digestion period. I mean, obviously the numbers were not great. The bears, are hit here, and they're looking at this saying Tesla up 15. What the hell is going on? This is a cult stock. This is not real. This cannot be happening because those numbers were not good. I'm with you that the numbers weren't good. But again, the reason I said the dip gets bought is because people aren't buying This is a car company. They're buying this as a future technology company, and the future isn't as far out as we think. So I think, we're in a digestion period here. Again, this is noise. I don't know. It could go down to 350. It could go up to 450. I think we're in a noise period here right now where we're just going to chop around. We could go back down to 300. But I think long term, if you believe that you're going to have humanoids coming, it's hard to bet against this company long term. And that's what CNBC commentators are just missing. They're missing the forest through the trees. They're looking, just as this says, well, it's 175 times earnings. This doesn't make any sense. It has to be a cult stock. I mean, if they start ramping production on Optimus in 2 years, and you start selling these things and making $10,000 a pop on each one of these things, where is that valuation? Like, I mean, where does it go? I mean, I don't even know. Chris Camillo over on Dumb Money has been talking about this for a long time too. He's great to talk with too. I mean, I don't even know. Like, I don't know where the valuation could go on this thing. If obviously they don't figure out the humanoids thing, Optimus and FSD fails, Tesla's an overvalued car company. But if they do figure out FSD, and if they get Optimus involved as well, think about the industries that they're going to disrupt. They're going to disrupt everything. So, I mean, it's hard to bet against this company. Do you wait for a pullback to buy? Yeah, you got another opportunity last night. I do think you're buying on dips on Tesla. That's my long-term thesis. I'm still long. It's the biggest position in my long-term portfolio.
Christian, VPOC me.
For which? For
Tesla.
VPI. Well, the level that I'm watching there is right around. Sorry, I was looking at another chart. The level that I'm watching right there is.
I got your chart up.
Is 411. So yeah, we're kind of coming into a little bit of overhead resistance, and which tells me, like, my thought about Tesla right now. I'm going to borrow this from another commentator, but I would own it and not trade it. I think while it's consolidating like this, Dennis has a great point. There's nothing wrong with this name consolidating. It's had really big gains, and it's quite natural for it to consolidate. We'll watch to see what it does, of course, once the market opens. But that's the level that I'm watching, is this right around this 411 level to watch. That's a little bit of just overhead supply. It's just the value area for the week, which gives you a sense of what the range was last week. So we haven't really broken into that yet. But again, I think you have to have a little bit more than a view of just today. And I think own it, don't trade it for now.
I know one thing that the Bears are saying is that they did get, I mean, what would those earnings look like without the Bitcoin bump? Right. And they won't have, I mean, unless Bitcoin goes up another 50% for the next quarter. So a decent
What are we
portion.
talking about? How do we get to Bitcoin? I lost the train of thought here.
I think he mentioned it. Like they had gains, right, Joel?
Yeah.
Oh, you're still talking about the old earnings. I don't even care about the earnings. Like I couldn't give two shits about what the earnings report was. And that's why the stock bounced, and that's why there was dippers there. The earnings weren't going to be good. Like we could focus, we could sit here with the blinders on and just look at the earnings and say, oh my gosh, man, these car sales, they didn't grow growth. They didn't do the car company. The car company doesn't make any sense. Car company. How can it be 185 times earnings? How 100? It again, with blinders. Like when Gordon Johnson evaluates that, he gives 0 to Optimus, a 0. Gives 0 to FSD. Says it's going to kill everybody. The freaking cars are driving themselves. Sure, they got to go every 300 or 400 miles. It got to be a critical intervention. But that was 6 miles a year ago. It's 340 now. You think AI isn't going to help that? You think AI that's talking to you on your bloody computers and figuring out isn't going to help that part of it all too? It is, man. I mean, at some point in time, these cars are going to be driving themselves. They say Waymo's driving themselves away, but it's different. It's like on a track. It's like on a grid. It's different, to take observation, have a neural link thinking about what a stop sign is. Completely different way to solve it. If Tesla solves it in this way, it's completely different. So, I mean, we can put the blinders on and say the earnings matter. Yeah, you know what? They didn't. That's why the stock's up.
Okay, Christian, you want to cover CLS? That's not one that we cover a lot. That's having a big move today.
Sorry, I was just noticing this, and it kind of just what our guest Mark Chaikin had to say about some of the energy names coming back. And I know that was a question from the chat about CEG and VST and maybe even GEV, because this to me is a little bit of a proxy, because CLS was a very strong name. It got hit with everything else with the DeepSeek stuff, and there was a quote that I was looking for here, just basically about overall the current demand environment for data center hardware is robust, as evidenced by recent customer forecasts as well as new AI program awards over the last 90 days. I've been a little bit hesitant. I mentioned like to wait a couple days after this the DeepSeek stuff. But when I see something like CLS, which was a darling of, it made new highs and then it got absolutely slapped down. But look at it coming back here on earnings, and it tells me that I kind of like what Mr. Chaikin said, and maybe looking at GEV today, which it took it a couple days to kind of right itself a little bit, but I would rather be buying the dip, I think, in GEV and CEG than Nvidia.
I'm with you here. You haven't really seen, and Joel's going to go some technical levels here in a second, but you haven't. Again, I like what Mark says. I do think energy is going to be a big part. I think the DeepSeek thing too. It's starting to come out that they used a hell of a lot more energy and a hell of a lot more money than what they initially told us. And we know when you got stuff coming out of China, you can't believe anything here. So they're saying $5 million, and we used 1% of the GPUs that everybody else or that ChatGPT used. We're finding out that this probably wasn't the case. So this initial oh my gosh, China uses 10% of the energy on their AI products that we're going to use is maybe not true. So in that case, maybe we just got a little bit overdone when we hammered VST down 30% in one day. Maybe we got a little bit overdone when we hammered down CEG in one day. There may be an opportunity here. I don't know, again, chasing them this morning, but I think on dips, I think maybe you are buying these names. I think I'm with you, Christian.
I like the CLS setup here, and it's all about see if it will get oracled. I mean, look at the move that you had here in Oracle, right? Boom. Now this is different. This is fundamental news, so you are moving off fundamentals. But man, you're almost back here. You're almost back to a gap fill, and that would be 121.42. So if you wrote it out on Monday and you're just like, oh man, this China thing is nothing. This is a great stock. I'm looking for a gap fill. You're going to get your opportunity here. This one, keep an eye out off the open. Look, open 120, 119 and a half, maybe a blast into this bar. It was a big bar on that day. But you come back down, do that open, man. There's a lot of air in here and a lot of people getting a lot of money back on this move, and decent volume, almost 300,000 shares this morning. So like I said, don't get oracled in this one. And if you bought it on the dip, if you weren't in it and then odds the earnings are going to be okay, boy oh boy, you're getting some instant gratification there. So we'll see how it trades today.
It's hard, the Celestica chart, going back to that one here, because you get the gap down, obviously, on DeepSeek day, and now you gap right back up to all-time high. I mean, we literally, am I coming in here and buying it at 120 now when somebody bought this thing at 86 bucks 3 days ago?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a definition of chasing. If you're buying Celestica today, you are absolutely chasing. Like the definition, chase, C-H-A, S-E in a huge capital letters. You are doing that today. I am not chasing in a non-chasing market. Is Celestica buy on dips? Maybe, but I'm not chasing at this point in time on this. I would say I missed it and moved on.
All I'm using this stock is just to say, hey, this is a proxy for the group, and let's see what the group can do now that this is kind of confirmed that they're doing well. So yeah. Do we want to talk about a couple of the names that reported this morning?
Yeah. Tons of good names.
You want to do well, let's do an ugly one. UPS.
There's a few of those. Yeah.
Oh, man. UPS. Value trap central. I've been saying this for a while on UPS. Value trap. Obviously, we know number of years ago, Amazon is not delivering many packages through UPS. Not only that, whatever packages that they're left delivering for them, I believe they said in the call is going to be dropping again. So Amazon's thrown them out. And this is now another just victim of Amazon. UPS is a victim of Amazon. And it's down 20 or 14% here today. This story is an epic disaster. Yeah, the dividend is great. Yeah, they still deliver all their online packages for everybody else. But, when you've lost all that Amazon business here, Amazon's just, eating the lunch here, man.
If you've been waiting to buy this stock since July of 2020, think about what was going on then, July 2020, right? They had a low at 113.05, and now you're trading 114.25. If you've been waiting for 5 years to buy that stock at 113.05, well, here's a good opportunity to do it today. So I mean, the next monthly candle is down near 100, but just giving you that as potential support. And FDX shareholders, oh, they can't be too happy about this move either. Boy, that stock's held up much better. But Christian, any comments on this? What boring stock, boring underperforming stock?
I think Dennis hit the nail on the head. And there was a headline the other day about Amazon and that they're starting to test drone delivery, I think in UK. So, I would rather be in that company. When does Amazon report? Is that I believe that's next
It was
week.
originally, they moved it to next week.
Okay.
It was originally a while ago, I thought, scheduled for tonight, but it's not. It's next week now. I think it's next week. Do you have the date? Chat will find it, or Brent Still
I
find
think
it in
it's
the
the
background.
6th, but you're right. They were late in declaring what day that they were going to report.
Yeah,
earnings, which
and
is kinda
everybody,
odd.
because they'd report on this day before, and everybody was guessing it was this day, and then they're further down. Because I had it on my list originally for tonight too, and I had to update that as well. But I mean, so UPS, the bulls are going to say again that Amazon is now actually only 11% of UPS revenue, so it's not much. But now the headline is that they're cutting that in half again, so it's going to be down to 5 or 6%. So basically, they're eventually just not delivering any UPS any Amazon packages. I just know my wife, Lisa as well. My wife orders
Every
everything
day,
from Amazon.
every day.
Every day. You're losing Amazon business. It is a problem. It is a problem. I'd rather, again, just looking at valuation, I've been talking about Amazon here too, and I'm bullish Amazon. It's my biggest position, my wife's portfolio. It's one of the big ones in my own as well. It's just hard to bet against this company. And when you look at it from a valuation perspective, the damn thing's as cheap as it's ever been. Like, it was always trading 80, 90, 100 times earnings, and people saying it's nuts. It doesn't make any sense. That was 15 years ago. Where was Amazon 15 years ago? 2012, 2013. Where was it? When all those people, again, were saying, everybody was saying Amazon valuation doesn't make any sense because they're looking at past PE, because they're just stuck in that whole valuation, like the blinders, the PE blinders, looking at it, saying Amazon's 100 times earnings. How does it make any sense? We had, Michael Pachter on the show back in like 2014. Remember what he said, Joel? He's like, Amazon could make $20 more a share if they wanted to, but they don't invest anything into the bottom line. It's all into the top line. They could immediately turn around and make $20 more a share. And if you do the valuation on that, he's like, it's like 40 times earnings, not 200 times earnings. He said that on our show 10 years ago. I mean, genius. Michael Pachter, the genius that he is, obviously, all over it. And I mean, that is where people get stuck. They get stuck just on PE multiple. PE in the past is just looking at it and say, yeah, if you're on a General Motors and Ford that doesn't have any growth, that's all you got. But when you've got, the growth story that Amazon had, man, I would have loved to invest in Amazon at 100 times earnings in 2014. I would have made a lot of money.
I love the thought, I think who's it? Peter Lynch approach, the Magellan fund manager back in the day.
Yep.
The walk down Wall Street, the basically saying like, hey, I know we see, and that's the same thing. I see the Amazon trucks, delivery trucks all over the place, and you're right. They're all about capturing market share and worrying about the earnings later. But I like that. I don't think Amazon is going anywhere either, and that's how I would kind of play.
They're just in everything. The company is so smart, and again, valuation perspective, it's gotten a lot cheaper. But you still have the growth story. You still have the cloud. You have everything else there. I mean, think about like 4 stocks. Like, let's just not even think about day trading. And this is a good exercise for you, for everyone. I'll let you go too, Christian. Think like even 2 stocks, 2 or 3 stocks. Chad as well. Think about 2 or 3 stocks that you want to own for the next decade. Like, let's just go into the future to 2035. Where are we in 2035? I think you've got humanoids, you've got, drone deliveries, you've got stuff we can't even imagine. But AI is such a big part of everything. which companies would you want to own? I'll pick the three. The three that I would want to own is Amazon, Tesla, and NVIDIA. 10 years from now. NVIDIA, yeah, valuation, but I think it's still going to be a driver of the bus. I think it's not going away. If I'm only allowed to pick three stocks and I have to hold them for the next 10 years, those are the three I'm picking. Joel, what would you pick? Throw you right under the bus. Maybe we come back to this.
I'll make it easy. I would the S&P, the SPY, the Qs, and I can't even think of a third one. Diversification.
Not a bad strategy. Just invest in the U.S.
Yep.
Christian, you got any? Again, if you don't have three off the bat, we could come back to this conversation.
I agree with you. To the 2 out of 3, I think I'm with you on Amazon and Tesla. I own both of those in my trend portfolio. Those have been holdings for a while. The third, I can kind of interchange a little bit. I've owned Costco for a long time, so Costco's been one of the names that and it kind of just fits nicely with that a little bit of diversification in that. But I could name like 3 or 4 other replacement type companies. Like I like a Morgan Stanley. I like things of that nature. So NVIDIA too. I get having that as your third because that's a great long term. And I think when you look at this like long term thesis, you also have to look at the leadership. Like Jensen is an amazing CEO, and even if this kind of goes on for a while with the DeepSeek stuff and so forth, they're still going to come out with he's still going to be on the curve, in terms of getting in front of everybody else. And that's the same thing with Elon too and Tesla.
Invest in good people, invest in smart leaders. I think you can't go wrong that way.
Okay, a couple stocks that were asked about, and we got a few minutes left here before we wrap things up today. We were asked about, we definitely got to cover Reddit. Someone made a nice contribution, so we'll cover Reddit. And Cat goes splat here, so let's take a look at the Caterpillar earnings.
Well, let's do Cat first. We're still in the earnings parade. We'll cover Reddit at the end.
They beat 514 versus 419. They missed on revenues. Revenues fell, so they are not happy with the revenue. They give it the full year guidance here. But Cat, after a nice run here, do we employ buy the dip in Caterpillar, trading at 374?
They're warning on 2025 weak equipment demand. That's why the stock is down. I never like buying companies that are warning on their 2025, revenue guidance here. Like that's scary to me. Valuation's always been fine with Caterpillar. Again, some stocks you got to use P's because some stocks don't have a growth story. They don't have an AI story. It has an A in it, but doesn't have an I in it. I don't know here at Cat. I mean, I see support down here, 350, 360. It has been a really good stock for a very long time. So it's still clearly in an uptrend in that. I just don't like buying stocks when they're warning on revenue. I'm probably just sitting on the sidelines in this one.
Opening into a pair of lows in the 374 handle. You're below that. This is just an open area here, really, between 350 and 370. This is where we're trading. So maybe Christian's 3-day rule here, maybe, put some lows in, fill these gaps, build support above this 350. But that's your major support. Christian, any comments on the Cat?
I think you got your opportunity a couple weeks ago when it went over that blue line that new blue line that you've got drawn on your charts. So I think again you kind of have to wait for a bigger let it settle in. Wait, the dip is okay, but I'm giving Dennis a lot of props here in this hour. I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to change that tomorrow. But I think he made a point too about the dip isn't being bought as much in the value names. The value names you got to be patient. So there's nothing wrong with buying a little bit here, but ultimately I don't think you have to.
What's the story? That's what I ask myself when I'm making a new investment. I'm like, what's the story that is going to be the catalyst to drive this? Caterpillar. I mean, what's the story here? I don't, there's not a cool story. So, and again, when you got revenue, I just don't see the driver. I don't see the catalyst to kickstart this right back, unless just, value investors just randomly buying the dip on everything. But again, to Christian's point here, they're not buying the dip on all stocks. Some stocks dips are not getting bought at all. I mean, General Motors dip hasn't been bought. It was the best earnings report ever. I don't joke when I'd say if I was General Motors, I'd take the company private. 4 times earnings. We're looking at it from a valuation perspective, but I mean, it seems crazy, but obviously something else is happening here, and I think it's story that General Motors is missing.
All right, we got a nice tip from Hello, new to the chat. Thanks for
Nice.
joining. I think you're new to the chat, and threw us not a curveball, but tough stock here. Reddit. I'll give you one. I'll give you the all-time high 205.57. Did take that out in the pre-market, so keep an eye on that. All-time closing high 202. So I don't know if you're short-term, medium-term, long-term investor. I just want to keep improving on that all-time closing high, not necessarily the all-time high, but that's the best. A big move off Reddit since Monday. Christian, thoughts on Reddit?
I think I think Reddit, like I keep hearing that Reddit is an expensive company, but it's also doing very well. I believe yesterday it got a nice analyst call on it. I mean, this is a strong trend. I think just going back to what we've talked about already, I would just be careful about, chasing up here. I think dips are what you want to be paying attention to Reddit, but you got a very nice strong trend, and I like the name.
I mean, you're chasing here, and we're in a fade market. So even though the stock is uptrending and it's good, I think Christian's right. I think you wait for a dip to get in. Valuation, we can't look at it on that because it's been a crazy mover. And I don't know, like maybe AI is going to be a play in here somehow, but I just don't see it as like an obvious one. It's not like Reddit just came out. I know everybody thinks this is a new startup and it just came out here last year because the stock went IPO. But Reddit's been out, for like 15 years. I mean, this is not a new startup. It's a company that just went IPO. So I don't totally get it. But again, retail driving the bus. It's a retail darling, like people love this name. So I mean, if retail is going to continue to drive the bus, it's probably hard to bet against Reddit.
Keep an eye on JMP Securities. They made a call on this. Andrew Boone reiterated a market outperform on Reddit and maintained his 190 price target. So it's $15 above that. So, I don't know if that was a catalyst along with the market. It was strong yesterday. It was kind of wishy-washy. But, yeah, keep an eye on that. Final thoughts here for today. I think this is a big day for the market. Heading into Friday, end of the week, we got all those losses back from Monday. Here we are going back to the S&P here, just above this, filled the gap overnight yesterday on the S&Ps. I mean, show me you can get a 6,100 bid here today. So that's what I'm looking at. And then I think even if you get, pull back today, I think, big earnings after the close, I don't see a super big whoosh on the downside, but definitely some very formidable resistance here in the S&P just at this 6,105 level. Dennis or Christian?
Let Christians take it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm watching so I'm just starting with SPY. I've been watching SPY kind of meander around this 604.40 level, short-term stuff. It's on the 1-hour chart. So I'm watching to see if price can kind of overcome that. And yeah, a couple of the software names, I'm watching those. Like they had, some inside days. FTNT is a name that's on my radar for today. So I'm watching that name. It had inside day. So I'm watching some of those cyber stocks, and yeah, we'll see. The financials were strong. Saw some call activity yesterday. So I did get into some Morgan Stanley yesterday, but I'm watching that group very closely. So a little bit of software, a little bit of financials. Those are a couple of things that I'm watching for today.
All right, tomorrow's guest will be Craig Johnson. Get his analysis of the start to the year and the implications for the remainder of the year. Just a quick editorial note. We will be sending out the wrap today, but there will be no wrap on Friday and Monday, giving Brent a couple paid days off. So if you don't see that in your mailbox, we'll be back on Tuesday. But great show here on PreMarket Prep. Hope we helped everybody with your investing and trading decisions.
Have a great day.